Right, we're back for another episode of Shut Up and Scale. By the way, this actually has been a show where I can tell you people not only have subscribed to Elephant Premium, they've also selected Shut Up and Scale. So that bodes well for the future and implies we may be doing something right. So we are going to start this week with a Peter Dunn topic. So Peter, what topic have you brought to us?
So my topic, I was thinking about this as a result of something that I saw on Twitter, which was a tweet that Froxen, I think it was Riot Froxen or somebody on the development team talked about, where it was about some amount of frustration is a good thing and something that they bake into design, right? And this was talking about mage bot lanes. So my question is it overall positive or negative that Riot is so proactive in policing things that are OP in pro play, which players might find frustrating or confusing in solo queue, right? So an example, should lane swaps have been removed, right? Should funnel meta have been removed? Should mage bot lanes, in theory, be removed, right? So my question is it an overall positive or negative for the pro scene that Riot are so active in kind of policing this in the long term, right? So not in terms of day-to-day, but in terms of the long term. Should we be removing
Specifically for esports, he means, though.
Yeah, for esports.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing is some of these things, even when they are OP and pro, are still like, even if they're just OP in other parts of solo queue, they remove them too. So I mean, we've seen that with like mage bot lanes. It's not just because of the priority in pro play. Part of it is also because something like 18 of the top 20 at some point in terms of bot lane solo queue picks were looking like mages, and then the remaining 2 were AD carries. I believe that was the case of what it peaked at some point. Mm-hmm. And yeah, this is a conversation which we've had various times, I suppose, over the last few years, because you've mentioned lane swaps, we've mentioned mage bot lanes, there were things like the funnel meta, all of which are, I think the crux of this question is strategies which are creative in one way, but are so OP that they have to be removed anyway. Yeah. And I think in some cases it's part due to player-based dissatisfaction, and then another part of it is just because they're too strong. For me, I think if it's just players being dissatisfied in one way, part of that really annoys me, because you go back to the early days of League, and then that's when we figured out this kind of laning system. What would happen if suddenly, just we had 2 people laning top or mid lane instead? What happens there? My initial instinct is to say I'm kind of annoyed when it's something enforcing an arbitrary decision of, say, champions within a certain lane or parts of the map. That's the bit which actually annoys me. I think that would be my starting point, because it's just defending something that's arbitrary.
I mean, for people that don't know, the original meta, I think in season 1 was 2 people mid, right? It was support mid, and then the Europeans kind of innovated this coming into season 1 Worlds, or whatever you want to call it, right? Season 1 World Championship, or I can't remember what the exact
season 1 championship was.
Season 1 championship, right? And that was the innovation was you have 2 people bot, and your AD carry isn't the one who goes mid, right? I think that was the innovation. So the reason I asked this question is because there's a clear argument that can be made about things like lane swaps. Lane swaps happening in pro play are so different from how the game is being played in solo queue, that there is a justification, I think, for those kind of things being adjusted, in order to force people to follow the meta. The problem is that the way that they've done it this season, to me, is that they put in role quests, right? And role quests have taken out one of the most creative things that I loved about League of Legends, which is swapping your solo laners, because you can't swap your solo laners anymore, right? There was one game which was on EG, which we had, where Impact basically couldn't play Lucian. So Impact picked Ryze and went to play mid, and Jojo Pion played Lucian into GP top.
That's cool. That's a good little note.
And you can't do that anymore, right? Because of the role quest. So there's been a lot of efforts to kind of to force something around mage bots. But the reason why it frustrates me so much, this discussion we're having that's being had online right now, is that in Korea they seem to be moving away from mages bot, right? Like, I think LCK
already,
is the yeah. So at what point do you try to like enforce this? What is an acceptable period of time to allow something like mages bot, in your opinion, which players find frustrating in solo queue? What is an acceptable amount of time to allow them to continue to be strong before kind of the pros figure it out, and then that would naturally filter into solo queue.
Right, first of all, on the whole thing of Riot changing the pro play, I don't have a problem either way, just be consistent. Like, I'll give you an example. If you're going to make stuff in jungle and mid mega OP, don't you ever dare, as a mid or jungle player, or Riot yourself, dare turn to ADC and top laners and go, adapt to the game, you have to be... Well, then you do that to lane swaps, fuckface. You do that to mage bot lanes. It's a nightmare, isn't it? You don't like to do... If you're a normal ADC player, it's like, yeah, well, guess what? By that logic, adapt. So first of all, which is it? Do we adapt, or can things be broken and we can all acknowledge they're broken and we can say, please taper that down? So as long as you make it coherent, I'm fine. And at this point, I've always made the point, Riot used to lie and pretend they don't enforce any meta in solo queue, and you could double jungle if you wanted. Yeah, all right, that's why you constantly change every season the monsters, what the items of jungle do against the monsters, the sustain. You obviously did make it so there could be one jungler, there always has to be a jungler, and there never will be two top lane. That was for like 1 month or something. So again, just acknowledge that you do affect pro play and you have your own vision of what you want pro play to be. If you do that, I'm fine with it. Because I think personally, I prefer the opposite. Like, one thing I actually enjoy about Dota 2 is they did leave it so that you could have incredibly creative approaches to how you even lane, what heroes can lane where, how you could even play on the map, how do you play macro, how do you cycle. They just essentially allowed a totally blank canvas. Now look, that means, in the same, I'll use the art analogy, that means sometimes you get a bad meta that's just people spray tagging all over each other. It's a bunch of shite. But every now and then you would get periods. Actually, this is actually how Alliance won TI4 in 2014, where they played the rat Dota side lane style and got back into a game that they shouldn't have been able to get back into because they couldn't win a team fight. I think that's beautiful when you allow all these ways to play. Classic example of a Western League when G2 won that series against SKT at 2019 Worlds. If they'd have actually had to play in the modern Dragon stacking bet, you could never do that. There'd be no trader tower. Like, you would have to just fight for the soul, otherwise they'd win the game automatically. So there were certain aspects that I do think allow what I prefer in pro play. And then I'll also throw this out there, which is, in general, it seems like this is an area we disagree on. I don't agree with this notion that goes, make pro play look like what you get in solo queue, so then people will enjoy pro play and then they'll play solo queue more. It's like, I don't think there's even that strong a correlation. Like, I think it's totally fine for the sport to be different from the casual version. I'll give you an obvious example. Most popular sport in the world, football, right? I don't think almost anyone in this call, as an adult outside of school, has ever played an 11 versus 11 football game with studs and fucking shin pads and real size goals and like a 90-foot fucking pitch. I don't think almost any of us have ever done that, but we could all be mega into football, and the joke is it wouldn't even matter. In fact, if you don't know, the reason I picked football is one of the reasons why Brazilian players are famously skilled. It's because they literally play with the ball in the fucking street. They don't even play out-organised football. So every one of them is
like
doing
futsal.
They're doing like a million fucking Cruyff turns and go around, because they're not even playing traditional football. Same as if I played football in the UK now, I would just be going to like a five-a-side game with people from the pub who aren't even real players. And that's a totally different pared down version of the game. Because, by the way, none of us would be physically fit enough to play an 11-on-11 game with a full-size pitch. It would actually be shit. So similarly, in the same ways, you know, a lot of old school players don't play solo queue. They play ARAMs. They play with their friends. They play ARAM. I think you need to understand there is a distinction between the two. Now, listen, you could maybe say elements of ranked might be similar to pro player, but I actually think lane swaps aren't what you get in solo queue is a very weak reason to remove lane swaps from the game, because you haven't addressed, does it have strategic depth? Is that a good thing in the game? Does it promote things? You know, it's a bad argument. Like, essentially, you're just arguing by appeal to popularity in this particular case, not even authority. Just saying if it's not popular, we won't do it. By the way, I'll also say again on roles, you don't hold that up in all the other roles. Like, by the way, didn't people complain for years about Corky versus Azir? We only got rid of that because we bought fucking Fearless in there. Everyone's fine with the mid laners being that 2 champions back and forth 8 million times. So that is one of my problems. Lastly, on to address Peter's later topic and advance the conversation, the whole thing of when do you change it? That's also one of the most difficult questions, Peter, because I can tell you from games I've followed, like StarCraft and Counter-Strike, where they're very slow to make changes, or they just don't, or they're tiny changes. One of the problems I know drives LS crazy is Riot usually within like 3 to 5 months changes if something's OP or they think something's broken. Believe it or not, that's exactly the moment when if you don't change it, you will automatically get organic counters that that come up, because here's how it goes. The metas are set at the beginning. This is what's OP. So the first part of the meta is playing what's OP or countering what's OP. Here's the part people miss. The third layer is you then get counters to the counters. And sometimes, are you ready? Sometimes there's a counter to the counter. That turns out being a counter to the original thing and now becomes the new OP, and the whole wheel shifts. And you never needed to nerf the original thing. And lastly, I'm not even a league expert, but even I've been able to see this is one area why you don't get certain champions played. Certain champions will exist only as counters. Spoiler, you will very rarely ever see a Zed mid lane. But I'll tell you what, if you put a load of Azir and bullshit mages like that in, you will see someone like Leader play a fucking Zed mid lane, I promise you. If you get in Fearless and there's only so many yawns, someone will play one of these picks. Yeah, exactly. Or a Talon or something. Some of these will only exist as the counter. So I think the tricky part there is, it's almost like you have to go, the patient's almost dead, sir. It's like, wait a minute, it's mutating. You have to wait. You have to just wait. Even though the temptation's going to be to just do something, you have to wait a little bit longer. And sometimes it goes magical. Sometimes it's probably shit too, but there you go. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the coaching side as well, if you know that change is going to inevitably happen, let's say, so I don't think Zed does counter Azir right now, but let's say Zed did counter Azir like in a really, really hard way. Yeah. So let's say that Zed, you would need to, if the meta is not Zed focused at the start, you would need to put a lot of time into Zed. And if you know that Riot is going to change that meta in like 1 month, you don't want to put that many scrims into Zed versus Azir, because Azir is just going to get nerfed into the trash, and you're going to waste like 20 hours of scrims, right? Getting this matchup. But if you can guarantee that is going to be in the meta and that is going to be the meta, you will put time.
Just for the sake of a funny anecdote to make this not too dry, that's even one of the things back in the day that my old pal Forgiven told me when I said, bro, you're always complaining about Sivir, but you don't play Callista. And he was going, Thorin, you don't understand. It is fucking OP. If it is that OP, they must nerf it. There's no point to play. And I'm like, that doesn't... You're explaining why you should play it, you lunatic. That's the opposite argument, even though there's a fucked up logic to that. That is, he was trying to abuse that exact angle, Pete, even though it was I knew what he meant, but that wasn't true. And spoiler, they didn't nerf Callista instantly. They left it for like 2 years or something, you know.
This happened with something like in Season 3, Season 4, Kassadin. This actually happened a fair amount where it's like, well, it's so OP, it will never get through bans.
Yes.
And then when it finally did, some people just had to wing it because they'd not played the fucking thing. So it'd been 100% ban rate the rest of the split. That did happen with some of like the real outliers. I'm bringing a point to the whole, should the game be the same as solo queue and pro, which it does tightly relate to the conversation, because that's typically what the devs are aiming for. Yeah, I agree to some level. You're never going to be coordinated enough to pull off some of the stuff which pro play does. And in fact, playing League Classic reminded me a lot of this, thinking, I was talking to Kire about it. In fact, I just saw him up in Scotland, so we chatted about this in person, where if you play League Classic now, so much of the game is so different. Most people haven't experienced a team fight within League Classic. No. If you've played like 10 games, you actually have to get to the point where you coordinate to do that. Mate, the way that Riot has tried to control the games to actually do experience somewhat of a similar game to pro play is, I think it's admirable to a certain extent, because it takes a lot of effort to achieve it. So I appreciate, like, bloody hell, have you actually managed to make it remotely similar to pro play? But yeah, I think that in some ways it's kind of like chasing the wrong goal, like you've been saying, because you're never going to make the perfect thing. I can understand wanting to showcase from solo queue to pro play a certain level of that. I also think it's a bit futile, personally.
There's definitely a whack-a-mole component where you think you fix it here and the other problem just pops up there, but you could never know till it's... By the way, if people don't know, I'll even give you a very famous champion-based example of why you can't balance pro play and single-player player at solo queue, right? Famously, in pro play, when it's really good, Rise is unbelievable for team play. But you can imagine if you're playing with no comms and people don't walk into the realm walk, it's suddenly half as good in solo queue. That's why there's times it's OP in pro play, and then in solo queue it's like 48% win rate, like, because they can't use any of the abilities in the way that makes them OP. I would imagine it probably same for Tahm Kench at certain points in history,
anything with a global, famously. So Twisted Fate, Rise, Ashe's a little bit different, but any kind of mid laner with a global was typically one of the champions that was just hyper nerfed to solo queue. Shen actually got this is you'll like this. This is quite funny, because there are some champions where their champions were in such a bad spot. Some of the mains in the community actually organized quote-unquote protests about the state of their champion. So this happened with Vel'Koz and Shen, I believe, where I think particularly with Shen, it was that the champion was in such an unfun place for the regular mains, that they were thinking, look, this isn't the champion fantasy. You're not going to pay attention to us because we're not a popular enough champion. That they did just say, well, we're just not going to play the champion anymore, and like the play rates is going to go down. And they organized effectively like a walkout, saying even if you love the champion, stop playing it. Those moments were. I think in those moments, that's just like, look, the balance team is just turning, just hasn't paid attention to this enough, and you kind of have to do something about it because the mains aren't in a happy spot. And that's where I'd naturally take the next part of the conversation, which is effectively, notice for instance the mage bot lane. I think that's because of certain things which have had a blind eye turned to, or just haven't been picked up by balance personally, which is mages bot lane are a thing because their wave clear and their mana sustain is so good that they can be 1v2 and they just never interact because they get to use a maximum range combo, say even something like Orianna, which we saw Viper play, but something like a Xerath or a Seraphine just throws everything at the wave dies, or you just collect the remainder of it at a tower so you don't lose too many turret plays. Your support gets to roam, and of course the roaming support's a very powerful thing right now, but I think that a lot of it comes through from mana sustain in bot lane from just last chapter, lost chapter, and then being able to reset once with teleport, go back for another back, and then you've got that item. You very rarely ever get put out of the game before you get to lost chapter. But the reason why Lost Chapter is a thing is because mages in mid lane had to play against stuff like, well, for a while it was Zed, but mainly stuff like Yasuo, Yone, manaless champions mid. AD carries as well also go into that too, stuff like Lucian, particularly could just auto-attack and wave clear down the wave. So for me, this is kind of like a number of domino effects which lead to mage bot lane. But then, of course, a lot of the Lost Chapter thing also comes in because of the impact of Earth. People like casting abilities, and not having mana means you don't get to cast abilities. All of this for me is a bit of a flowchart, and I think my issue with trying to like ham-fist mage bot lanes out of the game is something which LS has talked about too. I don't think when they're removing these things from the game, they're actually getting to the root cause of why they were in this position in the first place. For me, it's about mana, not just about roaming supports or certain matches to bot lane. I think this has actually been possible for a number of years. Also, as LS has said, it's just only happening now.
I agree. I fully agree with this. I think it's a lot to do with roaming support. I think it's that people have worked out, have finally put the time in to work out how to exploit catch-up EXP and things like this, right? Like I think that has played a bit into it. I agree with the mana thing, but okay. So this is the lane, the mage bot lane question. And to me, I think the meta is already kind of being solved. I think LCK generally leads the meta because
LCK is back to like Jhin, Varus. They're playing tons of the classic ones.
Yeah, exactly. So I have a feeling that this will fix itself, but I guess. Okay, so let me push this question to the far extreme. So do you remember the funnel meta that was 2018? You know, it was like Master Yi mid, Braum and Tarek jungle,
or Swain or some shit.
Yeah. How fast should this? So by this logic, should these things just be removed like immediately, or should how long are you?
Well, this is something that I've vaguely addressed at some point before. You have to do it just after an international event, so the regular season isn't affected by it. Now, if you removed mage bots like at the end of regular season and before playoffs, even then that's a little bit sketchy. But at least you got playoffs in a different patch. The worst thing you can do is remove it as soon, like as close to the international event as possible. You have to give a big run-up time, otherwise teams are going to have been preparing on stuff which isn't. Well, you talked about this with Given, right? And it's completely right. You know, if people have been practicing mage bot and they don't get to use them, well, you're screwed going international because you spent all your time going towards that. What if a team overperforms because they have mage bot lanes and now they don't have them going into worlds after they've reached it? So for me, the answer will be as far away from an international event as possible.
By the way, I would even say, why not just bake it into it? You've already essentially split the season up into 3 events. A split into an international, into a split, into an... How about if you do it on if this emerges in winter, just make it so that after the international for winter, so you're playing the same international as what you played in the season, you just nerf it after that. And then for the next season, mini split as it were, that's what you go into for the next one. Because I like the idea, again, there's a coherency, because I do think it's stupid. Like when the aforementioned funnel meta happened, here's what was stupid about it. It made G2 and Perks like the best player in the fucking West, but then they nerfed it, and by the time we got to the playoffs, it was normal League of Legends again. So it's like, well, so what were we all practicing for? Like, what was this? Like, that's kind of wacky, and that could have affected people going to Worlds. Luckily, he managed to make it there through the fucking regional or whatever, but that could have gotten sketchy. Meanwhile, if I was number one with that, I'd be like, well, why are you switching it? Like, what, am I not allowed to win in the game too? Lastly, there's also a conversation like Nymaera's brought up here that's actually the dirty secret of League. Here's how we all know, it's not whether or not mid laners are better players, but mid lane is clearly a more powerful powerful role to answer my question from past weeks. Here's why. Because notice how in both directions, everything just fucking runs around mid lane. So first of all, if ADCs get too good, ADC players don't get to play it anymore. It goes mid and shits on the whole fucking game. What? Like, by the way, listen, I love watching one of our favourite players abuse his Zeri mid. It's absolutely disgraceful. That should never be your fucking mid lane champion. And then it even used to work the other way. Once they made jungle a fucking OP, magically, like, stuff that wasn't anymore allowed to play mid just went bottom jungle. It's like, what? Like, why is that fucking... the joke is now Ziggs plays ADC for that reason. Like, it used to be a mid lane champion. So I actually do think also... I think you're right, Nymaera. Here's the issue. I'll give you a quick analogy. When they first brought CSGO out, one of the big changes compared to CS 1.6 is in CS 1.6 you actually have this mechanic around the guns where you essentially try to completely stand still and let the recoil completely reset, and that way every bullet on certain weapons will have perfect accuracy. So famously the main pistol the CTs have was amazing, and every great player would be slowly like taking shots where they were letting it reset enough, and that was the routine and the rhythm, right? In CSGO basically they changed the mechanics of the game and how like the reset works on the recoil, so that actually it made more sense, believe it or not, in CSGO to like min-max. What you would do is you'd move a little bit and you'd lose a little bit of the accuracy, but you still had like say 75% accuracy, plus you're moving, so the other person's, it's harder for them to hit you. So the game never became what it used to be. You didn't did that style anymore. Now you would move a bit. So essentially one of the problems I do think also here is what you're saying, which is they think that they can whack-a-mole, nerf the bot lane and mages. But what they're going to discover is that'll probably change how mages are played mid lane, or it'll change how items work in terms of mana regen, like you're saying. Essentially the real root cause isn't actually the bot lane. That's the fucking mushroom popping out the ground. You want to attack the mycelial network underneath. Look up what it means, Riot Froxon. It's a real term, mate. It's nothing to do with Timor, just because mushrooms and that, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I think I can recall one situation where I think that I was really pro how Riot handled this, right? Which is they decided that people were roaming too much from mid lane, right? So they changed how minion waves functioned, right? So the minion waves in mid lane started hitting, crashing like 5 seconds later or 8 seconds later. You know, whereas normally mid lane minions hit first, and then because side lanes are longer than
so
the mid
basically because mid lane waves met first, you could clear them, then roam to the side lanes when their waves were hitting importantly.
Exactly.
Now I believe the change was effectively both mid lane and side. Because basically if the minions left the nexus at the same time, they would naturally reach mid lane a little later. A little earlier rather, and then side lanes a little later. So if you cleared quickly, you could reach the side lanes and do that. What they ended up changing was side lanes will now crash at exactly the same time. So you can't be on top or bot wave because your mid wave is there at the same time. So it changes the roam timings a lot.
Yeah. And the consequences for this is that everyone started playing Corki mid and Tristana mid and Zeri mid, right? That was the one split where AD carries were like played in every mid in every single matchup because roaming was...
It was 2024 summer,
that makes... I can't. 2024 summer. Yeah, it was the last split that I was coaching, and so they knew, they came in with a goal that this is what they were going to do. They saw that it was having an impact that they didn't really like, but they let it play out until the end of the year, and then they said, okay, we don't like this. We like mid laners being able to roam, but they let the entire thing play out, right? And this is the only time I can think where this has been fully allowed to play out. Maybe lane swaps. But
even then, it got nerfed just before Worlds. So even then, it falls into the same issue that we've had with the other times where things have been removed, where something like lane swaps have happened or they've been hard-boiled into the game. We saw lane swaps get messed with before 24 Worlds and 25 Worlds. Both of them happened. I think I can't remember the exact patches, so forgive me if I'm wrong on that. But I still feel like this falls into the overall umbrella in one of the other parts of the conversation, which is when should you change it? Not just before Worlds.
Sure, of course. No, I mean that's happened a lot, right?
Okay.
Well, okay. So that was when my kid was born. So okay, we can move on. I think that's just to wrap up on this. I think there's a line here, right? And I think transparency is quite important, right? Like obviously you're going to have a lot of people getting very, very frustrated, but if it looks like you're always responding to fan outrage, what's going to happen is fans are just getting outraged a lot more, right? Like it looks like all the time, you're just going to always be responding to fan outrage, which is just going to encourage more outrage, which is not going to fix anything, right?
There's that, and also, I mean, this works in multiple aspects of life. How this even works in your professional careers as well, which is if you only respond to criticism and displeasure, you end up cutting away things. You don't always end up building on the positives. And there's also another adage which applies to this, which is the player base doesn't always know what it wants. It knows what it doesn't want sometimes. It doesn't always mean it's good to remove that too in the same way. So when it comes around to this whole discussion, I think it is good that Riot is responsive to community. I don't always agree with how they remove things, and I don't really agree with how they triage things is the big thing here. I'm glad they're responsive. It does make you feel as a player as though you're part of a living community. Not many games have this, and I think that it does have its positives. But I do think that Riot, in the way that it has changed things, hasn't always got through to the root cause of why something's... Well, lane swaps, for instance, the reason why they were happening was clearly not what they intended at first, because they still kept happening afterwards, for instance, as well.
Okay, just to wrap it up, one word answer, nerf mage bot lanes into the ground before Worlds, yes or no?
No.
Nope, Nymaera?
No, don't do it just before Worlds.
Right.
Okay,
obviously, this is an interesting season of LEC, and we have an upcoming game, which all of a sudden is a lot spicier than it would have been at the beginning, because at the beginning of the season, we were supposed to believe there was a big three. It's supposed to be G2, KC, MKOI in that order, but actually MKOI has been so disastrous. Obviously, they're even in trouble now for their own homestand situation, that when they play NAVI, who was supposed to be perennial mid-table team, that, you know, if anything, it's just the Rylesh to some other team next year pipeline, isn't it? But at this point in time, believe it or not, on this poly market, NAVI is the favourite in this match. They are at 57%, MKOI is at 46%. So, who wins this game, and which of those two numbers would you take?
Well, Peter, I'd be really interested what your read is on what is going wrong exactly with MKOI. And then, because I think it's easier to say, okay, what's going wrong with MKOI? Can Navi replicate that, those circumstances?
Okay, so to me, I think the thing that's going wrong with MKOI is Alvaro has forgotten how to play League of Legends. Like, to me, like, that's the big problem. You ask me who's the most important player on MKOI, not who's the best player, who's the most important player. I say it's Alvaro, right? Why is it Alvaro? It's because him roaming is the person that enables Illuria, it stops people camping Jojopian, right? And this is a roaming support meta, right? So this should be the perfect Alvaro meta, right? Like when he's playing Karma every single game, you know, you can go and say, okay, that is not an Alvaro meta, right?
Okay.
That is a Busia meta, right? But it is, the problem is that we are now in the roaming support meta and he doesn't seem to be able to play it anymore. And this is the one thing that he was able to do forever, right? And this is what gives me the biggest fear against Navi, right? I think that so I'm just trying to see, is this Navi game the next game that they're going to play? Navi,
it's on Sunday, so I don't think so.
Okay, so they're going to get one more. They're going to get one more game before that. I think that basically.
Sorry, just looking at the schedule, yeah, it does look like it is both their next match. They're just not playing on game one and day 1 or 2, either of them. So Sunday will be MKOI and Navi's next match. Yep.
I think Navi are going to win, and basically MKOI's schedule, they have two. So I remember that MKOI have to play like two lower table teams, and then I think it's Shifters, and they still have to play like Shifters.
They play SK and SK Heretics, as far as I know.
Okay, so they play SK and Heretics. So I thought, okay, maybe if they get to play SK and Heretics first, they get to go and fix their issues with Alvaro, then maybe they've got a chance coming to this. But if you're telling me the game's on Sunday, that's a lot of things to fix. And I mean, to me, that's a problem. I don't even think Merwin's even been that bad this split, right? Like, he hasn't been insane, right? But he's been one of their better players this split. Jojo is still Jojo. He's like good in lane and kind of running it a little bit in the mid game because he's just... The problem with Jojo is as his team struggles, he tries to do more and more and more and trying too hard. But the problem is Alvaro, and I don't see how they're going to fix Alvaro in less than a week, right? So I think Navi are my favorites to win. That means I'd probably go for Navi. Given the choice.
I think one other thing which is playing into this too is MKOI are only playing one match on this weekend, and Navi are playing 2 in 2 back-to-back days. So Navi are going to be playing versus MKOI on Sunday, then they're playing versus Heretics on Monday. So I think prep advantage goes a bit towards MKOI. They've only got the one game that week, and then they've got basically one series a week since then. But Navi have 2 in week 4, 2 in week 5, 1 in week 6. So prep, I think, goes... in terms of the intangibles for that, go a little bit towards MKOI. Do I believe in Navi's early game enough? Do I believe in their support roaming playstyle? Because yeah, I think you're right. I think that one of the things that we were holding out for MKOI was, okay, what happens with, what happens with Alvaro? Will he end up kind of reviving? And I just don't think that's been the case, because he was really the heart and soul. We were talking about, obviously Jojo is the most important player now in terms of he's the best performing player. But I think the biggest thing that changed the needle for them is if Alvaro finds his form again. I don't think he currently has. Even with the prep advantage to MKOI, I wonder whether the pressure's getting a bit too much. I wonder whether they might. I wonder whether they could slip up here again. They've really not impressed me. Even though I think it's fairly close, because I don't think NAVI have been blow out the water strong either. I think there is enough going towards NAVI where, for me, I look at the numbers and I think maybe I'd favor MKOI a little bit more. I think that NAVI have enough of a reasonable chance of an upset that's where the value is.
Yeah, if people don't know, the reason there's also mad pressure is because obviously that homestand's coming up. It's going to be like the fucking playoff or whatever it is, and they might not even be there. Like, that's crazy, but it's plausible. Like right now, the obvious team that could do it is, I think, SK. Actually, they've had some half-decent games. They play a similar set of opposition. If they win the head-to-head, I'm sure that helps. So, like, put it this way, I think for this game, I actually don't hate if you want to take NAVI. I think I would probably still take MKOI, because since they're an underdog, I think if they can just get this shit together in one game, sure, they can get it done. You can win a close 2-game series. I'm with you on the reasoning, though. One thing I think's always been underrated, because remember, it's easy to blame Merwin and Super. Yes, they have bad games, and they've had literal org pressure and a fucking target pit on their backs. But this is happening all around the world in League right now. So I'll give you an example. If you go and watch T1 play, everyone just shits all over fucking Orna and Thorin for being morons, and Faker can just do anything he wants, mate. He can run a game down. He can not carry. He's the last in line. They're the whipping boys. You go look at a bunch of teams and that happens. So I think actually in this team, I agree with Peter. Like, Alvaro's supposed to literally be a star player in this team. Like, the classic way from day one in 2024 this team won was Elyoya helps open up bot lane so that Alvaro can roam, and then he makes all these incredible plays on the map. And he actually looked, this is how badly it's aged, he looked in 2024 like he is to support what like Kalista is to ADC now. Like, holy shit, it's like a generational talent who understands the game already at day one in LEC. That just hasn't been the case all year. He's been chilling because of the fucking Merwin Super, you have to perform or you get fired topic, basically. And also, if you play ADC and you don't carry a team fight, you're going to get blamed. If you play top lane and you get solo killed, you are going to get blamed. It's a lot easier for the Roman support to hide what they are doing and not look that bad and just not be at the right place at the right time, which, by the way, is the same as not carrying a team fight sometimes. So I'm with you. I actually think MKOI is fundamentally unraveled internally. And low-key, they better hope they make that playoffs. Because if they do, they've got a chance to still get it all together. If they don't, basically, as far as I can tell, this will not be the team you see next year. They'll probably cut at least 2 people.
Oh, 100%. I think that this is, you've talked about this, a couple of things happening worldwide. I was actually just talking about it with my brother today about LPL, because it feels like in LPL, teams are really, irregular season, they're using it to figure stuff out. That they are not the finished product. They are clearly not locked in regular season in the way that we thought they would be. And MKOI, I think, hoped to be in a similar position where they could just slide into playoffs, they'll be fine, and then they can just sort it out then. But LEC doesn't have a 2-group system like LPL or LCK, where I think that certain teams in Asia can get away with being worse in regular season and frankly just doing nonsensical things in regular season, but still having a couple of series in hand, but because they're more likely to make playoffs because they're in that upper group. I don't think MKOI have that luxury, and that pressure will add on to them.
Okay, we'll now move on. So we have now got Nymaera's point. So what is it?
My point is about franchise players, because it's a topic we talk about a fair amount on this show, so I thought I would word it like this. Who are the most successful franchise players for both the players and the organizations?
What does the first part mean?
Because I think that... So the franchise player means that someone who stays on a roster because they have loyalty to the organization. The years go by and the roster changes.
I mean, more like, what I don't understand is how could they be successful for themselves and the org? Like, what does for themselves mean in the context of being a franchise player?
I think there are some franchise players who should have been let go by the organization because they underperformed for a long time, but they stayed on them because of loyalty from the organization to them, partly because of contracts, partly because of that too, and in the way that some players have such a good contract in terms of value that the org wants to keep on it. Sometimes players have been contract jailed, but they've stayed on the roster for a long time. But basically, the core of the question comes down to, if a player has stayed for a very long time on a team, what are the best examples of players who maybe maybe got to ride out their lows and come out the other side better than it, or maybe stand better times on top teams.
Oh, I see. Right. So even if the player was a franchise, but like the joke would be like humanoid, maybe they should have cut him, but actually it probably kept him at the top of the scene. He never had to fade out.
Yeah.
Right.
Humanoid and Razork, for instance, on Fnatic, great example of they were there for a long time, should they have been? I also think there are great examples of people who have been both of these at points too. So let me start with one here. Xiaohu is a very interesting person to talk about because I think that his peaks have been very good, and I think that for RNG, he benefited the organization massively because they knew what they were getting around this player strategically. I think actually on Weibo, it's flipped a little bit, where actually I think other teams probably would have replaced him, and I think that he's been able to ride out some of his lows and come out better because he's still had actually very, very good results on Weibo. He has done, but I think it's benefited him more that the organization kept him, given the level that he was showcasing at that point, especially when you compare it to RNG. So I think that Xiaohu is a great example of both sides of this, where the organization benefited so much from his peak across his career on RNG because he was so stylistically different. You could build a team around him. It was very easy to utilize him as a central piece, as a franchise player, quote unquote. But then on Weibo, who he has been ever since then, I actually think that he's had a lot of low personal lows to the point where I thought, realistically, start of summer 2024, bits of 2023, bits of 2025, I was sat there thinking, any other team would have kicked you, but because you're in such a solid position, you have such a good reputation, you've been on this team for so long, they've kept you. And largely, it's actually worked out really well for Xiaohu, because even when I didn't believe in him, he's largely managed to bounce back. So hopefully that shows a good example of both sides of what I'm talking about here.
Okay, I get it now. Do you have one, Peter?
It's a really interesting take. Okay, so I'm just looking through my list that I have. Okay, I've got one that I think fits this mold, which I think is Xie. Xie from World Elite. He was on World Elite for a very, very, very long time. Got to the semifinals of Worlds with the team alongside. Basically, that World Elite was like Xie, Mystic, and then Mystic, I think, had a kid or had some reason he had to go back to Korea, and it didn't work. It didn't, like, the team didn't function so well afterwards. But it turned out like Xie gave a lot to World Elite. They backed him. It didn't quite work out at the end, but I will say Xie, because he was on World Elite, he was playing really, really well. He got an Asian Games win out of it. So it turned out really, really well for him in the end. But I think that after everything there were times when he could have left that team, right? And over the earlier part of his career, and they showed loyalty to him in the end. And, I think it kind of worked out best for both parties because they had kind of like an amiable split at the end, right? Whereas if they kicked him under less auspicious circumstances, it could have been much, much worse, right?
All right, I've got actually, here's what's funny. When I say the two, you're going to have to realize it's for different orgs. So believe it or not, I am actually going to take both Showmaker and Canyon, but Showmaker is just for D+, and Canyon is for Gen G. Here's why. Canyon, by the way, in Gen G, might be the most propped up fucking legendary player I've ever seen. He's got a giant contract, as far as I can tell. He's Canyon. He's got to win loads of splits, and he's almost never been Canyon on that fucking team. But he lives on the fact that, like, one, I think people in his team respect him still as Canyon, and then two, it's his name value. Like, again, there's not, unless you're bringing in, it'd have to be at like a Kanavi. You're not bringing someone in name value wise over Canyon. As long as he still wants to play the game, you're going to keep him there. You're not going to, you would never gamble on a Lucid type player instead of him for that position, or in a rookie player. And then Showmaker, I actually think it's perfect because right now he's really good again. But I tell you what, there was times in D plus where his level had dropped way off, and if you were trying to win the LCK, you should have probably signed a BDD when he was available, or a scout when he was coming back. Like, these would be good gambles. But the point is, because that was just Mr. D+, everyone else had gone at that point. Nagori was gone a million years over. Canyon's already in Gen G colours. You almost had to keep him at that point because it was the only actual angle. No, I think there's a lot of people who are going to fit this category for this. That's your one thing you've got left is, hey, at least we've still got Showmaker if you're a D+ fan. That's Summit, right? And he just got to sort of chill. And I think he also probably earned dog credit from one of the top side used to just carry every fucking year. So then finally when he has a down split, it's sort of like, you can't kick me off now, boys. I've fucking made this team. So I think bizarrely, even though at one point they were like fucking the best in the world at their positions, I think they both benefit from the org.
Yeah, and I think it's allowed them, I think Canyon, we'll see if he can bounce back to that level again, because I think Canyon is he is still my jungle GOAT, but that isn't really for his more recent games on Genji. I think this year in particular, and a lot of 25, when Genji was struggling, it was largely because Canyon wasn't getting the hang of the invading jungle meta. He's not really looked the same. He was most dominant when it was a farming jungle meta and he could be an actual carry, and that has come out at different points too. It's not like he's been always bad, but he's just not been Canyon. I love the Showmaker point though. I think that's he probably is the best example of a franchise player because he's never played for anyone else.
No.
He spent his entire career there, so he really has ridden it out high and low.
So it's kind of cool, they're relevant again. Like people don't know that wasn't just CWC fluke. They actually right now they're going to go to Worlds and they have like a dark horse chance to win it. It's real, yeah. Keyword dark horse.
Yeah, they've really read out the lowest things. Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's worth saying as well that Showmaker is one of the most popular, streamers in Korea, right? I think he may be the most popular one off T1. I know that he's like really, really, really popular streamer. So that probably benefited him a lot. As somebody who doesn't watch LCK that much, what's gone wrong with Canyon? Because I saw him at first stand, obviously, and I've watched the occasional game. Like I watched a T1 versus.
I mean, I'll give you right out the gate. Yeah. I'll tell you one of the craziest things that will blow your mind, Peter. He's not even a hyper aggressive jungler. He actually farms half the fucking time and plays like dog shit like Skarner type stuff. But he's not even Canyon, bro, for real. He's not like the I play Lee Sin and dominate hands. That's Kanavi, if anything, bro. Like it's actually bizarre. Yeah. Canyon genuinely has become like a different player late in his career. What do you think, Nymaera?
Yeah, I think Canyon struggles to get into the enemy jungle. I don't think he coordinates well on invades. I think which is what everything the jungle is about this year. This year, jungle has basically been about how can you mess with the enemy jungler to get like 2 camps ahead and ride that to an advantage. But it normally comes through aggressive level 1s, aggressive invades. The way that Canyon used to get ahead and stay ahead and then be the best jungler in the world is that he was the most efficient farmer, so he knew how to get to farm quickest, and he knew how to like just keep that up, always have a camp available. But it wasn't really through invading, it was mainly through efficient jungle pathing. I mean, not that he wasn't like good at that, but in the AD skirmisher jungle meta, he's not really been good at bullying about the enemy matchup and getting that extra camp ahead. That is the Kanavi, Shun, owner style of play, and Canyon has really struggled to deal with that. Great series to watch for this is the series they lost against G2 at first stand, because I think that is something which has continued from that, because pretty much he really sleepwalks his way into certain situations. He doesn't do like all of the double checks he should do on vision. So for instance, I think it was in game 1 of that series, Skewmon just walks up into the banana bush in top lane river and just swipes the scuttle away from him, and suddenly he's a scuttle down. It's like, you have lanes which could respond to you, you're just not doing your due diligence. There are other points where, I can't remember the series for this, but I remember picking up various points where I think, okay, realistically, he should be invading through bot jungle and then wrapping around for a gank bot lane just to blow a summoner at least, and he just doesn't see the angle. He's a little slow to it, and he doesn't get onto the map in the correct way. It's not like he can't find skirmishes and not be a team fighter at points, but really, I think that because jungle has become so much about efficient use of time and pressure in early game, which normally I would have said he was great at, he's just not managed to get into the enemy jungle to activate this style of jungling.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I mean, that's something that somebody, like I said, I don't really watch LCK.
Put it this way, I think that is one area that will be really unfair in 5 years when the kid looks on Gamepedia, because they're going to go, Chovy wasn't winning worlds, he had bloody the goat in jungle. No, that's the equivalent of having fat Ronaldo when he was like, 100 kilograms and he wasn't actually like running that much. He just had the odd good game. Like, you can't look at those players and go, you had Ronaldo. No, they didn't. They had the one later, mate. Like, the one 5 years, that would have been dope. They didn't have that one. So that's the one player that I say is boosted on that one. Did we have another player for this one, by the way? I actually think, by the way, this question is more interesting if it's this one about the franchise rather than who was the most successful for their franchise. That feels a bit more obvious, doesn't it? So, is there any other angle on this? Someone got one?
I've got two. I'll go with one of mine, which is let's do the one that we kind of touched on in the previous episode, which I think is Flandre on Snake. Like he was like the best top laner in the league.
Yeah.
He was so good for so many years. Didn't go international, so I think this may have protected him because he didn't go international to get destroyed by Korean tops when Korean tops were at their absolute best. So he got to just have this reputation in China as being like the best top laner. If only he could go international, he wouldn't get crushed by all these Korean tops.
There are some LPL analysts who are heading towards your location right now, Peter.
So he never had to suffer. He preserved his reputation, and then after his time on Stake was done, and he was no longer quite the player that he'd been for all those years on Stake. He then got to go to a good team, then got to go and win Worlds when top lane was no longer. Yeah. It's ironic. Like,
listen,
he never got to go to Worlds.
Two things. One, he's winning Worlds again this year. Mark it down. Get the fucking checkbook out, because that's how they're going to punish Bin. And then two, actually, I deny all of that. It would have been like Bin now. He would have been the only Chinese one that would have bashed the Koreans. Exactly. And thankfully, it's the other way around, Peter. It's actually good for the analysts that we don't ever have to see him go there after seeing all the LPL teams we all hyped get destroyed. It's good for us that we can just live in a bubble and go, no, it's all right. Flandra was the shit. He was the carry. It's okay. It's just the bloody jungler and support. They're the ones who...
Jesus.
My God,
yeah, I think you can actually view it from both sides. Yeah, because I think probably Flandra wished he was on a team which went international back then, so perhaps it went negatively for him. But Snake would not have been relevant without him. No. The one last player I would have liked to mention is Keen for his Afrika days, because he spent 4 years on Afrika, and he was again the only reason that team was any kind of relevant in my mind, really. And I think that didn't work out very well for Keen. I think he should have jumped ship earlier. I think it worked out very well for Afrika. So for me, that was quite an unbalanced relationship. And I think a lot of people recognized that at the time.
By the way, if you notice also, if you were just really important and good at your peak, you tend to get at least a split or two, sometimes a year or more. You can just be a bit tired. Like, I'll tell you one that'll shock people. If you just go and check split for split, I'm right. There've been some splits where CoreJJ was just all right. The problem is, at his peak, he was the best player in the whole fucking league and transformed the whole... But there's been some splits where he couldn't do it every split. He had some splits where it was just all right, And they had to just suffer it, because what are you going to do? Kick him and then look like an idiot when he goes to the other LCS team, and then next season he's the MVP. So he's had a few where he got to skip by.
Yeah. Actually, I've got two more. Okay, so I said I had one more, but I've got two more. The first one I'm going to say is my last LPL one, which is PYL. He was on LGD for the support. He was on LGD forever, right? Like, he at his peak, he was better than Ming at his peak. He was better, like, as good as Mako.
He was a very good player.
Times he was better than Mako, right? But basically, LGD kind of ran out of money. Like, all the star players, like, dispersed. He was the only guy that stayed, because I guess they were the team that gave him his shot, right? Sure. He stayed all the way to... This guy was on this team for 8 years, I think, like 7 years, 8 years. It's some insane amount of time, right? And he still got to have a career. He still got to meet the fans. But like by the end, I don't even think he was that bad actually in his last split. But he got to stay relevant, and people's LGD fans were basically PYL fans by the end. That's what I'm gonna say. Like, this team was LGD were atrocious by the end, right? And and he stayed all the time.
No, it looks like he was on it for like 8 straight years, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing people forget, so was him. He was also with him for quite a long years.
It's true.
More than just 2015, just they were in the doldrums of the LPL.
Dude, I wish LGD didn't just like mismanage so many of their different rosters to make the most of some of these players, though, because they are one of those what ifs. They were so good in early days of the league. They could have been a great brand.
I mean, people
forget.
Still
a good brand.
We always criticize some of the misses, like why did Save go there, but because Kakao was there, he never got to play again. He disappeared in the LDL. Yeah. Or why do you put like fucking Dandy and Matter? People forget LGD just had a super team. They had like 2 world-class top players they were cycling on, and then they had fucking aim. It was unbelievable. But I actually think just them specifically, fuck the other teams. Just that one LPL team ruined the reputation of the LPL for years. The ripple effect was crazy on that one, because they were justifiably hyped, but then they were absolute bombs at Worlds. It's true.
Yeah.
Well, thank the goddamn Juggernaut patch once again. A huge meta shift just before Worlds, like relating to the last topic. Sometimes it literally did change the fate of a region, to be honest.
Yeah, but it's funny because Imp was the only AD carry that was arrogant enough to say we could pick into Mordekaiser, and it's funny because they left Mordekaiser up twice. I think. And the first time it was against Korean.
First one was remade because of a bug, right?
Something like that.
I thought there was a game. I thought there was a game that Worlds where like Mordekaiser was let through, and then there was a remake because of a bug. I seem to remember that happening. Was that LGD or was that? Am I thinking of a different team?
I think you're thinking of a different team, because that LGD team, right. I remember they left it up twice. Once was against a Korean team, so I can't remember the exact, but I remember it was
KT Rolster.
It was against KT. They left it up against KT, and KT were like, "Oh my god, they're trying to bait us into this. We're not going to pick this. We're just going to go and play standard against you guys to just beat them." Then Imp didn't pick Mordekaiser either. Just went through the draft. It was the only, because GP went 100%. Pick ban. It was in a pick ban 100%. But Mordekaiser was not, because that was the one game it wasn't. And then they left it up against a Western team. I'm going to say
TSM.
TSM. I'm going to say TSM.
I think so.
And yeah, they just got crushed into the floor by it and ended up not going out to groups. And so, but I can believe that is imp, going into that draft meeting saying, "Oh, it's fine, I can play into it." And no, they could not play into it because it was ridiculously broken. But yeah, tragic. The only other the last player I'm going to say, because it's interesting if this guy will still be a franchise player going into next year, is Jackie's. Because Jackie's has been on XLGX for a very long time now. No, this is his fourth year? And yeah, and
this will be a third year.
Yeah, and this is somebody that they've invested a huge amount into. They've clearly tried to build teams around him, and it kind of has worked, hasn't worked. It's an interesting one, with Jackie's. We'll see where it goes at the end of this, because I don't think there's that many mid lane options, right, that GX can pick up that are European.
That's the why the context of it is strange, right? Because his first split on GX, good. Yeah. I think it was downhill ever since then until like the last 2 splits, maybe.
Yeah.
So I think probably a good like year and a half of his time in GX has been a low swing for him, to the point where I've heard a lot of analysts think probably we're getting towards the end of his time on GX at various different splits, and then he kept going. So he has been able to ride out the lows quite well, and he's come out the other side. I mean, he dropped a mega lock game the other day, which helped.
Yeah, that helped.
He's also one of those players who also just like gets by because other people, like for example, jungle position's been the contested position in that team, so he just gets to chill. And also, I think people assume unless you have an insane jungler, what are you going to do as a mid laner? So I think he's just gotten by, but he has been quite mediocre for a while, certainly.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Like, there is a world, because of how weak the third spot is, the GX can go to Worlds this year, in which case he's guaranteed his contract, right? Like, I mean, it's possible, no? Like,
and then that would be an excellent example of this question, which is effectively, on the player side of it, who's been allowed to ride out their lows because of belief in the org.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm curious to see what GX do with Jackie's next year. If they don't, let's say they come 4th or 5th, right? Which is the most likely thing. Whether Jackie's continues to stay, but yeah, he's the other one that I thought about.
I mean, the real one people haven't thought about there, Peter, is even darker. Fucking Oscarin might go to Worlds again, but not on Fnatic this time. What even is that, bro?
Holy moly, yeah, that's true.
Because that's the worst thing is I can already tell idiot Fnatic fans who all said cut him will then go, we should have kept him. It's like, you don't stop doing single factor analysis. Please look at the game. The game is more than that. So whatever, it is what it is. I still believe that.
Fnatic went to Worlds with Adam as well, and that was like strange in that.
I still think these were downgrade roster moves onto this team. It's just the rest of the league got shitter. Like at the end of the day, your roster move didn't make MKOI weak. MKOI made MKOI weak. You know what I mean? Like that's and Fnatic even looked like they upgraded and got worse. So I don't know what the GM is right now in LEC. Anyway, speaking of players that have lost weight, or maybe they've just ridden it out with their name value. You know, with our sponsor Hims, you can also get help losing weight, but in a good way. So if it feels like a losing battle, this summer could be different. Skip the guesswork and try weight loss by Hims. Access an affordable range of FDA-approved GLP-1 medications, including the Wegovy pill and the Wegovy pen, plus the support to actually stick with it. So if you don't know, one of the things about Hims is they do it all online. Like if you actually sign up, what happens is they will put you in contact with a licensed provider who will help you determine, is this the right treatment for you? If you get prescribed it, your medication just all comes to your door. There's no insurance necessary. They can help you lose up to 20% of your body weight when you combine it with diet and exercise, because the pills and the pen, etc., help regulate appetite, make you eat less, keep weight off, but also it's the first ever pill for this, so there's no needles required in case some of that bothers you. And when they say to do it with diet and exercise, they have a whole care team built into it like that. So you have 24/7 access to message with a care team and in-app lifestyle and nutrition support. Like they will give you recipes you can eat, meal plans you can design around fitness videos, content about how to sleep better, etc. And they make it really easy to just find affordable GLP-1 options for both your wallet and your lifestyle, and you get a treatment plan that is personalized specifically to you, and unlimited dosage changes as needed. So, ready to reach your goals? Visit hims.com/scale to get a personalized, affordable plan that gets you. That's hims.com/scale, hims.com/scale. Weight loss by Hims is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk A/S. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information and restrictions, visit hims.com. Okay, we will now go, and there's one more little poly market to do before we do the last topic, which is on the topic of the MVP of summer. the franchise player, who is actually going to be the MVP of it. This is a brand new market, I will say, so a lot of the numbers are all over the place. But it's been out for like over a week. People just haven't noticed this one's out there. So for this one, because the numbers are all wacky, I just wonder who you think the MVP will be. Because I think actually, surely it's wide open right now. Remember, in theory, you're not supposed to be doing it off the playoffs. It's supposed to be off regular season. I mean, obviously, the first shocking thing is could be a KC player, right? That's absolutely viable. Maybe people will still believe a G2 player commit. Who is your MVP? How about that? Who is your MVP, guys?
Oh, this is the interesting question because G2 has well, you've got both solo lanes of G2, which I think are in the short running. I think BB's on a really good form, but Caps is actually playing pretty well too on the whole, at least within their wins. So if you go over the average of a whole split, do we get the TSM, Bjergsen, double lift problem where actually one detracts from the other? And would you compare that to, say, a team which has like a single very strong player that like determines the way that the game plays or something like that? I would say something like Relic for Navi, right? He's a player who very often is like, this is the reason why this team succeeds.
Definitely.
Casey's been in a weird spot before because obviously we've said like in the past it's about Canna, but then we said actually it's about Kalista as well. So actually both of them end up taking some fire from each other, which is good obviously for the team if they're both playing well. But so the question is, is a team going to, the best performing teams, are they going to be detracting from each other from their best players? That was where my initial thought process goes.
I think so, but the problem is that there's such a gap between the top two and the rest of the league that I don't think like an Illuria, Jojo, Piano, Rilek are going to be able to challenge anyone from G2 or KC for regular season MVP. Surely not.
I don't think so either, personally.
I'll even give you the edgier angle. Actually, with how this split's gone, I think some people might even vote for Kiahu, bro, because he's had the globe, hasn't he? I don't know that he's actually the best player in the league, but his globe has been considerable from what he was before. Yeah. He's had some regular season games where he gapped people.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But I think we have to look at the remaining series too, because now I'm just thinking about it. We've only got a couple of weeks left. If it's like only going to be off a regular season, you got to look at remaining schedule too. So KC, who can they prove themselves against? They've got GX, Shifters, SK. They don't have a strong strength of schedule, but it doesn't mean that they can't have good results. G2 have Shifters, Fnatic, GX, I suppose middling teams, and then those are the two which you're really looking at. So I suppose they're even on that front. I guess that helps. So there's no difference there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say for MVP. So looking at this, if I was choosing something to go on, I would say buying no on anyone on anyone on Navi that isn't Rilek, because the thought that anyone on Navi, if Navi are going to win an MVP, is going to be like, it doesn't matter how well Paris plays. It doesn't matter how well Poby or Main to play. There is no chance on earth that any of these guys are going to be MVP. Okay, so that's what I would say the value is. But if you're going and saying who do I think is going to be MVP of the LEC, I think it's going to be Kalist. And the reason I think it's going to be Kalist is that I think BB and Caps are playing really, really well. But you can say that Kano and Kiehu are also playing pretty well. But I think that the narrative will be that the only AD carry in the league that is playing at like a super, super high level right now is Kalist, and the gap from him to the second best AD carry, I think, is bigger than the gap in mid or in top. And that's why I think he's going to win the MVP.
But I think that KC, he's playing well. Busio's had some good series. I think he's had like two. Because one of the other things which I'm like, just to litmus test this as well, because again, I guess for community sentiment, obviously things change quite a lot. Because remember, this is going to be a vote between multiple different communities as well. Yeah. Player of the series has been, so the top runs for player of the series, which it's an okay litmus test as far as it goes. You've got Caps at 3, he's first, and then in terms of like joint second, you have BB, Busio, Relic, and Yike all at 2 series apiece. So having 2 G2 and 2 KC members in the top 2, and none of them actually being Kalist so far. And if you think, and obviously Kalist is very, very important. I wonder whether that gives you a better lay of the land as to who's actually been, taking the storm from the other players on their team. And of course, Casey beats G2. So if Casey do well and they finish first in regular season, they look very good doing it. Is it just a KC player over a G2 player because people want to vote for the winning team? Sometimes people get, because you were asking all the players, asking all the analysts, sometimes they will just pick someone from the winning team. So if that's the case, do you just have more votes for KC as a whole? Do they vote for someone on the winning team? If so, who is that compared to like G2, who I think is quite obviously one of BB or Caps? Does that help G2's case there?
Right, my problem with this is there's a different question from who is my MVP and who will win the MVP. If you ask me who is my MVP, I actually, despite all that, would probably take Calist because I think he has his flaws being excellent. He does carry the team fights, which helps. When you carry a team fight, it looks awesome, and that's the strength of ADC. And then also he has the flair. He does the little moves. He has the persona to go with it. So I think it builds a whole character in your mind. Here's the thing: if I actually had to say who will win it, I agree with you. The KC angle actually makes it really murky because people can go any angle they want. I actually think low-key, this might be where they just give it to Caps because it's Caps. He's had a very good season. You know what I mean? Like, listen, he's one of those players.
That's my worry. Sometimes they try to give him it.
People like Bjergsen, Messi, they want these people to win the MVP. If it's viable to give them it, they give them it. So I think it's totally plausible they just give Caps it because it's like, great job in your 1 million of your career, bro. You know, especially actually, you can even argue because G2 isn't number one, it's going to make it look more impressive that he carried the games, isn't it? Whereas normally, actually, if anything, when they have a super team, that's where, again, they divide up the votes, don't they? You've had Sama's playing great or the junglers. So I actually think, yeah, right. And surely, if you're using LEC logic, think of only an LEC fan or an LEC broadcast person. You saw earlier in the year, it was the Skewbon show. If anything, we're all like, it's Skewbon's team now. Actually, he's not even really in the convo for this one right now. He had a bad start to the split. I think, if anything, that kind of revalidates Caps as like the star player or whatever the fuck. So I'll say Caps, I think, wins it in spirit. I would personally take Calist, but whatever. Who cares what I think, right?
Yeah, I think in terms of who's going to win it, yeah, for me, it just feels like a Caps winning MVP split because he's playing flashy. And yeah, I think earlier in the year we were talking about how crazy it was that Skewmond wasn't being outshined on Caps on a Caps team. Do you realize how like crazy that is? Almost all the time when you're on a Caps team, Caps is the pivotal member, regardless of whether he's more supportive or more carry. But he is the guy which you pay attention to. I think actually Skewmond was earlier in the year, which is kind of crazy. I think the only other argument is that actually BB's been really rocking people. BB's been really damn good on a lot of his picks. So maybe he'll sneak it. But I think for me, despite the fact that, yeah, I'm actually quite aligned with you. I think that Calista's been really good. And as Peter's been saying, you know, very far ahead of the rest of the role within Europe, especially with Super not performing very well, Hans having a bit of a weird time in the mage bot lanes. Calista's probably the most important role member ahead of the rest of his role. But I think Caps might just sneak it because of name brand value. And I think that he will have less votes split from the rest of his team if G2 do well.
That's fine.
Okay, we will go to the last section, which is obviously going to be the fan-related topic I'm dropping on for this week. So if you want to be the aforementioned fan on a future episode, just subscribe to Last Free Nation Premium. If you have, then go to the Discord. There is a set of threads that says LOL takes topics. Just make sure you put Shut Up and Scale, then put your topic in there. If we pick your topic, we'll read out your name as I'm about to do and do the topic. Also, at the end of this, we will do an exclusive offline Q&A, which will only be for subscribers. Again, if you're a subscriber, please submit questions for that so we can do it. Although fair enough, the subscribers say they sure have submitted quite a few, and I'll sometimes still dig into the past to grab them if they're in the channel. But also, that's one way you will be able to access that. And if you're a premium subscriber, you have a 7-day money back guarantee, and you get access to every single show ad free on the podcast platforms. So you don't have to listen to ads if you don't like them, or you just rather just have an uninterrupted experience in the gym or whatever it might be. And they have a bunch of other extra content for other shows, like in the movie review show, we do a 5th movie behind the scenes only for people who pay for that one. Obviously, we do that as more like deep cuts. It's not like Jurassic Park or something is in the 5th one there. Okay, the topic for this week is by Gaxmoo, and he says, by the way, this is the way this is even phrased. I have this weird thing about me in my career voice where I don't gather fans who love me. I gather people who are annoyed with me, but demand I be locked in a room with them so they can explain to me why my opinions annoy them. It's like, just turn the fucking show off, bro. So listen to this question. He goes, totally neutral way to phrase this. He goes, does Rookie never have to take any career blame for choosing what I assume was getting the Giga bag every year in IG in return for playing with bums and having fewer Worlds runs? I'm putting all the emphasis on it. What other players prioritized out-of-game luxury over in-game? No, it's even though that phrase, you cocksucker. He didn't do any of it. He didn't do any of the psychology you read. Actually, Worlds, Gigabags, Drake meme or something, get the fuck out of it. And he goes, and should, he even put should in air quotes. Fuck you, pal. He should have had more trophies in defense. How dare you, sir? But fair enough, I appreciate I like the flair. You know what, even though I disagree with the sentiment, I appreciate the flair and that you did something with it. So, gentlemen, what do you think? Should Rookie carry blame for staying in IG and presumably, I believe he did have a big contract and essentially choosing to be a one-team guy? He wasn't really, he later on and went to Laws, but does he get some blame for doing that instead of, being more ruthless as a free agent or something?
I mean, the premise of this and the rookie thing is really funny to me because literally on this show, I think this is probably about the fourth time we've mentioned either as this like a fairly decent point or a passing comment that, yeah, rookie probably should have judged his rosters better. Like we've called it the Larson effect before, but it could really be the rookie one too.
Oh,
so even us, like we have a lot of good rookie sentiment here because we've seen him over the peak of his career. We literally do blame him for his career moves.
Well,
he's like the primary face of someone that should have managed his career better.
Yes.
But okay, so this is perfect. So this is why you should get premium, because we had a fan question about this from a couple of weeks ago where somebody asked, if I had the choice to coach any team in the LPL, which team would I coach? And I said I won't go into, but basically I said IG, right? And I won't go into the individual players. Get premium and go and watch that one. But why is it IG? Okay, and it's because IG are the quintessential idea of the idealized org that only exists in people's fantasy of. We will show loyalty to you even past your peak, right? If you're retiring, we will find a way to get you into the coaching staff, And in return, we expect loyalty from you, and they got it, right? And this is from players like, they kept on Z-Type for like past, even though they were bringing in rookie, he was clearly a better mid laner. They found a way to fit him into the team. They kept Kid on the team for like years.
They let him become the jungler, bro.
Yeah, they let him become the jungler because they had loyalty to because these guys could have gone to any team when they were like in their early teams, and they chose EG. And this comes from the top down because who is the owner of IG? It's Wang Sikong. And if you don't know who Wang Sikong is, he is the son of like the ex-richest man in China, right? One of the richest people in China. He's like this entrepreneur. He's like a billionaire. And why would you stay on IG, right? It's not just about the money, right? I'm not even convinced Rookie was the highest paid player in. I'm sure he was in the top 5.
He was
right?
one of them, but I don't think he was the number one.
Yeah, I don't think he was number one because you get so much by being on this guy's org, right? This guy, he owns like talent agencies. He owns I'm not even going to go into who this guy is, right? But this is the guy, but he's also somebody, he goes onto his players' streams. He goes and plays solo queue with them. He goes and plays duo queue, right? Him and Rookie used to go and play duo queue together. How many teams does your CEO, right, go and play duo queue with you, let alone that this guy's one of the most famous guys in the whole of China, right? And like, he goes and he is friendly with his players. He looks out for them. He has their back. It's a nightmare team to coach, I can imagine, because you can imagine if all your players are best friends with the CEO, it's probably a fucking nightmare to coach that team.
Oh, of course.
But this is why there are other things in League of Legends, right? That players value. It's not just about money. It's about loyalty to your org. It's knowing that your org is your back. It's knowing that they will look out for what's best for you, right? And I think that plays into it. I don't think it's just a zero-sum game about money, right? I don't think Rookie's Knight, for instance, who will literally go to like the team that gives him the biggest paycheck no matter what, right?
Yes.
So,
well, that wasn't always the case for him because he was the franchise player for Top Esports for like, what, 4 years? 4 years? So actually, 3 years, rather, because he was 2019, 21, up until 22. So he was there for a long time. Well, so the story goes, they actually designed the Top Esports Knight helmet after Knight's name. So he did spend a lot of time there. Obviously, since then, went to JDG, went to BLG, he's bounced about the place. But, for a while, he was that franchise player too.
But I mean, sometimes you just want to be in that environment. Sometimes players thrive in that environment, right? There's some players that like want to believe that they want to like play for something. They want to play, they want to for something that they believe. Like they want to believe that they are playing for the good guys, It's a weird thing to say. It's really, really weird thing to say, but that can be a really, really powerful motivator. And I think that kind of plays into a little bit of Rookie, right? Sure, he got paid a lot, but he's also getting a lot back, and it's not just money, right? And I don't think he would have got that if he career hopped from team to team. That said, he did have a lot of trash rosters. He probably should have had a larger say in picking his players, right? I think he probably just sat back and was like, coaches, analysts, you go and pick the players. I trust you. Like this save player, he's probably fine, but maybe he shouldn't have, right? So I think that's what I would hold against him. But don't put it down to money. It's not just about money, right? Like we talked a lot in the franchise thing when we see Shia and PYO and things. These guys aren't just staying for money, right? Like it's kind of different, right? And it's in the West, I have a feeling that even if you're the franchise player on a team, you would probably leave to go to another team for 30 or 50K more a year, right? And fans would probably have your back in that regard. That's not how it works in China, right? And for some players, right? And that's all I'd say. That's all I'd say on that topic.
It depends
the
on
way-
the circumstances in which you leave. Because if it's a bad anyway, Thorin, go on. But it depends on the circumstances.
Basically, obviously, even though he's just doing it to rage bait, the idea he only stayed for money, you've even done that in hindsight, like as if he knew that these were teams with shit and it was a Faustian bargain. And he was like, all I want is gold, like fucking Thorin from Lord of the Rings, from The Hobbit or whatever the fuck. They didn't do that, did he? Like, here's the sad thing. I actually think Rookie's naivety, in theory, makes him a fabulous player to actually be in an org. So you mean the star player joins the team, and because we pay him well, and it's a good org, because it's been also wasn't a random org, was it? Like, it was a good org. You actually want star players not generally to interfere with GMing the team. Like, the dream is that, like Caps, you just shut the fuck up, play mid lane, and they put the players around you, and you just trust that over time they do, because otherwise, how can the GM ever do his job? If you're cock blocking him, if you're reaching out to other people, if you're ever doing, by the way, this happened in Counter-Strike, I can tell you there was a player for EG called Stewie2K. He reached out to a player and basically told him, don't fucking bother joining the team, we don't want you, mate. They were trying to sign some like star player from Europe. Like, that's a nightmare.
You're kidding me.
We all think it's
what?
But here's the problem: we all think that's funny if you then do it right though, and you get the player you want. And because again, we're all doing it in hindsight. If you make the big roster moves where you're the ego player and you use your weight and throw it around, if it works, you're a genius. You win all the championships like Knight. Yeah, he looks like a genius to me. Keeps getting a super team. But the other problem is sometimes those players ruin teams. Perks, other people like that. Like there's been some nightmare fuel examples where Reckless, where they've gotten people kicked out with the wrong people to get kicked that the GM wouldn't have kicked, the org wouldn't have kicked. Maybe they shouldn't have kicked. Maybe they should have just worked on their issues with that player or what they didn't like about them, or even better, just fucking bury it for a split and see how it goes. So my problem is, one, he actually was in theory being a good star player here, letting them GM. They just GM'd poorly. Two, I actually think, like Peter, I think it was more about loyalty and raw money, because actually I'll go the other way. Considering this guy used to win the MVP and be first team all LPL mid laner when he wasn't winning the league, I'm pretty sure he could have gone to anywhere for the number one contract every single time his contract was up. He could have just done the night and kept saying, right, whoever basically offers me $1 million extra, I'm in your team. He didn't do that, if you don't know, till the end of his career. And it's just because Rookie had insane longevity. He still had something when he joined V5 and fucking TES, etc. That's, if anything, he'd already wasted his whole prime. So what I don't get is this. It's like at the end, you think if I admit a flaw to my player, you'll never do it to your player, by the way. Faker was just a 10 out of 10 every game. It's all. He wasn't, by the way. He even got carried at times, including into certain championships. But if you think if I admit anything's wrong, then it means he's a worse player. Here's the problem. If Rookie fucked up his career and allowed himself to be badly GM'd, that doesn't actually make you right that he's a bum and he didn't win the league. That makes me more right that that's why he didn't win the league. So what's weird is you're making a point for me, but then you're using it against me. What a weird angle to take that is, you know. Like, what's funny is if you actually want a better example of that, you've picked the wrong Thorin mid laner. That's Froggen's career. Froggen took $1 million check started extra zero on when the players, he knew they were bad and there were nobodies, and he just thought, who gives a shit? I'm getting a massive fucking contract and I'm still Froggen. Also, lastly, that's the one thing that Froggen and Rookie have in common. I also think, and this is a winner's mindset, they really believe if they play a 10 out of 10 league, the rest will figure itself out. You know, that guy who's not that good now, it doesn't matter, we'll win the game anyway. I'm the carry, give me my pick, let me go in the game, let me lane, let me get to the team fight, and as long as you do a half-decent job, I might carry the game anyway. A lot of star players think that way in every game.
And I'm just going to, sorry, Nymaera, just before I hand over to you, I'm just going to say one more thing about Rookie leaving IG, right? Because so again, you know, if you want to understand IG, you really have to understand like the ownership, right? A lot of that money came from property, right? And the reason why IG had to scale back because there was a property bubble burst in like 2021, right? So IG had to cut back on their spending, and they couldn't afford to, like, they couldn't offer Rookie even something reasonable, right? So it's like, from what I've heard, there was kind of Rookie was basically told in advance, we can't afford to re-sign you, right? Like, you know, you should go and look at the market. He wasn't like kicked out of no reason or like offered some insulting amount of money, right? It was literally because a lot of their funding was linked to how well the Chinese property market was doing. When it went bad, they literally had to really, really scale back, and they gave him the heads up. And that's why he ended up leaving IG. It's like a Messi situation with Barcelona, right? It's like Barcelona went to Messi and said, "Look, we just can't afford to pay you anymore," right? This
is when he went to PSG.
Yeah, exactly. So
also, by the way, am I the only one? Even though if you're judging people's careers, if you're judging off trophies, you have to say this guy should have gone there. He could have been won this year. But forget that part. Am I missing something? It is still a cool part of the narrative in sports that people are loyal to a team. Like, I'll tell you what, I think it's criminal that Harry Kane stayed on fucking Spurs forever. But I'll tell you what, it's kind of cool cool, though. It was his boyhood club. That's literally the team he dreamed of playing for, Alan Shearer on Newcastle. There's a part of me fucks with that. Sometimes some things are bigger than money and trophies, even if we don't we deny as much because we're trying to be cool, you know. What do you think on this topic, Nymaera?
Yeah, no, that in terms of the loyalty to the club, just quickly hinging on that before going on to the rest of it, you know, I grew up watching a lot of rugby union. That's the sport I probably talk the most about. And while there were basically some regulations put in, whereas basically you have to play in Wales if you're actually going to play for the national team, or you have 50 caps or more, there were some players that could have gone made mega bank, because Wales is not a very affluent nation, and they could have gone and taken the bank elsewhere. And there were some players I thought were, I think they did emotionally the important thing to themselves. Yeah, I think, look, rookie, I don't know how much of a hand he had in the offseason. I think it is the dream as a player to not have to have much of a hand in the offseason. And that's where look, Caps has so many players that want to play with him. You're going to get the roster that's best for him. And I think that he has benefited so much from being connected to the G2 framework, and then Roman as well. I think we actually mentioned it towards the start of this point. Larson had to go somewhere else. Realistically, Larson just not achieving much on Rogue, given the level of player that he was, that was criminal for his career. I mean, Larson actually being able to go toe-to-toe on terms of scaling team fight mid laners against the best in Caps, and he was actually very good in form at various points over Larson's peak as well. He should have been able to do
this
more.
Also makes me realise, because these are all 3-4 and mid laners, Rookie, Larson, Frog. You know, the obvious hubris they all have is because you always win lane, that makes you think you can win every game of League of Legends, but there's so much more to the game than just a laning phase, isn't there? Yep. So I get it that you're always competitive, but it doesn't mean your team will be.
Yeah. Like, I think Larson, he really struggled because the game, again, it's actually changed quite a lot since 2022 when he won Summer with Rogue. Early game objectives became so much more important after 2022. Yep. Like, Rogue of 22 could basically just let Malrang fuck around, take all the heat for the first 10 to 15 minutes of the game, and then afterwards his laners would just be a better front-to-back teamfight comp. You had, like, Comp playing Civic, list or whatever you want on him. You've got Larson playing Victor Azir, just scaling up as best he can, and Odo playing a tank teamfight top laner, and then, you just rock up to a teamfight at 25 to 30 minutes and you're fine. As long as Malrang, and at that point, Trimby managed to, would have been Malrang or Inspired, whoever you have in the jungle, in the various rosters. The reason they were successful is because they didn't have to take their laners out of lane before they had scaled. And I think that Larson, if he wanted to make the most of his career, he would have had to have been a little bit more heads up about how his team was playing with the newer early game focus, and either obviously change his playstyle or go to a team that would allow him to still index into that in a way which I don't think Rogue was very successful at beyond that 2022 split, which is really sad because, again, Larson should have achieved a lot more. So he's one of the big ones which I would have noted. Oh gosh, who else stayed on a team for too long and getting much out of it? Maybe Kazi? Maybe Kazi should have got more done. Of course, he moved eventually, but I wonder if it was a bit too late for him because he was very loyal to to Mad Lions. I suppose he did move. No, I suppose he moved a little bit earlier, right? So maybe it doesn't apply to him. But Kazi's a player I think should have done more, but I don't know whether that fits the spirit of this question. Who else would you chuck onto this? Anyone got anyone big?
Humanoid, if his contract is as high as rumored. It's rumored that Humanoid's contract was like 900k, right? Like, I don't know if he was actually paid 900k, but like the rumor is that he was definitely paid more than, definitely over 500. But that is definitely a guy that was very happy to take the bag. And one of the reasons why I think Fnatic were not able to bring in, they were always promoting rookies to play with him is because he was taking up quite a large amount of their wage budget, I would say.
I'll give you one that people might miss. I think the obvious angle, because I also think the team shouldn't have signed him in mostly, it's obviously fucking Hooney. If Hooney really just said in his career, I'll give you an example. Say there was no difference in salary. You all get paid identical uniform amounts. You're just in a team, you get paid X amount stipend. I think this guy could have had way more championships and fucking top teams and runs, and he probably would have just gone to Korea and stayed there for longer to try and win worlds or something. Unfortunately, he's another example of someone who just hopped around for $1 million contracts over here, over there. And unfortunately, it eventually got in the latter years so that people almost just signed him to be like, hey, we've got Hooney, but they didn't have the rest of the squad ready. And he would just join a team where there was 1.5 other good players on the squad. And so it became so that just going to Worlds was an accomplishment for him. But if you think how good he was in his first season, he should have had he should have done the sorts of things that Sven did, where you just keep winning split after split after split and years after years, you top it. So I think he actually, look, fair play for him getting the money. He probably had a cool experience, but I think he could have had way better resume than he did. And now he's considered almost like a fucking meme. But at one point in time, he was actually like one of those playing a Western region, but I border on a world elite level player.
Yep.
Player I just thought of actually in here, just 1 second as well with this, in terms of another one which just sprung to mind. Sorry again to cut in on that. But I think Power of Evil took the bag. He hugely took the bag. He should have done a lot more too. He's got to be on there, right?
Fair enough. I mean, I'll just say with Huni, so I don't know, I haven't talked to Huni about this, but this is just my headcanon, right? Is that Huni had his year on Fnatic, he got mega paid on Immortals, because that was the Immortals team that broke the budget.
Oh, they inflated the salaries. Yeah.
And then he was like, okay. Yeah, thanks. He's got, okay, I've got my bag. I'm now going to go back to Korea. I'm going to see how good I could possibly have done. I'm going to give it my best for 1 year before I just completely chase the bag. He goes to SKT. They win MSI. He things don't quite go to plan at Worlds. They lose in the final Worlds, and he's like, fine. I've given it. I've now justified where I am as a human being, where I could be at my peak. And now that I've done that, I've cleared that for my conscience in the future, I'm now just going to take all the money as much as I can. But he did go back, and that's what makes me believe that he just needed to do that for himself. Yeah. And then after that, he was just like, money.
But this way, it's actually why people make the mistake of thinking that your career is you either have all the success and you're like Faker, you succeed for 10 plus years, or you're always the one who can't get the trophy No, there's an in-between that's most players, which is actually if they got the success early in their career, they wouldn't give a fuck after that. It's very few players. It's why, in a weird way, if you're not going to be the one who dominates the whole game forever, you want it to be that you're tortured, because then that's something to keep fucking staying up at night thinking about and shadowboxing in the gym and thinking, this is going to be my year. That'll keep you going for a lot longer than actually just having a win and then reforming it. Fuck, do I just try and win again? A lot of people aren't built like that. It's very rare.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the perfect contrast with Huni, of course, is Impact, right? Because Impact, okay, so he's had a bad year this year, right? But Impact, whenever he joins a team, he genuinely believes he can win, right? He's not just coming in for
By the way, the story with him even goes, Peter, that actually when Team Liquid came in and gave him $1 million offer, supposedly he was, because he's very Korean, so he was just going to stay at Cloud9, and Jack basically told him, you have to take this offer. I'm fucking Cloud9, I'm telling you, just take the bloody offer. It's $1 million, I can't pay you that. So just take it's better for you.
Of the opposite.
If you leave, but it's actually better for you in that sense, so you should just do it. So I agree. He's the kind of person I get the sense would never leave a team.
Yeah.
Which of the Korean Exodus players do you think took the bag the most and achieved the least?
The obvious one's Dandy to me.
Point. I think the obvious.
I genuinely think it's sad because you can tell the people who didn't watch the old school days, bro. It's like a conspiracy theory now that Dandy was a fraud. He was never that good, and he was just carried by Mata or something. Mate, at the time, he was an absolute smurf. He was unbelievably good. He was mega. But his problem is, he only had 2 years in Korea, and then he had a scoffed LPL career, and then he also. This is the worst thing. I do think for plebs, if you end your career in ignominy, then they don't give a fuck about you. So the idea he ended his career failing to qualify for LCS, bro, don't do that to me, please. I don't mind that. I'll always remember you fondly. But to a pleb, they're going to think you were trash, bro. So I think he ruined his career. He had a chance to literally be the GOAT.
I mean,
especially from the early years, yeah.
Definitely.
I think the thing about Dandy is he kind of took the Vici situation lying down. You could tell it was grating on Mata, right? Mata was clearly triggered. You could look at his player count. You could look at him Lockie and Jason literally running down the game and things like this. He was triggered that he wasn't winning on
people forget about that. Mata rage locked in Jace support and just ran down a game. God, I forgot about that.
Yeah. But that was the difference between him and Dandy, right? Dandy was just I'm going to take my bucks at the end of this. I'm going to stay on here. I'm going to see how much, this is important for my career, But Mata was I cannot. Mata couldn't take losing. Mata couldn't take being on a bad team, and that I think is the contrast here, because that's why Mata kind of rebuilt his career afterwards, right? Whereas Dandy, I think just allowed himself to drift.
Okay, I think that's where we end it for this week, unless you are a subscriber, in which case you will join us in the exclusive Q&A. Other than that, we'll see you on the next Shop and Scale.